Hey everybody, welcome to the weekly video on Quilling with Jess. Thank you so much for joining, and I'm so grateful to you being a part of the all access tier of my Patreon. These weekly videos are one perk of that membership, and I'm so grateful that you've joined. I hope that you enjoy the class that we have today. Take your time, enjoy yourself, and be sure to jump back onto Patreon afterward to share a picture or any information about how it went, who you're giving it to, where you're displaying it. We'd love to share that with you. So continue to watch these weekly classes to kind of get more skills and more tips for paper quilling and paper art, and we'll see you in the next video. Happy crafting! To start us off, I'm going to go through and show you what you're going to need to create this today. So first I have the card here that we're going to use as a backer. You can use any kind of backer that you want, a frame or anything like that. And my suggestion for this is to not fold your card before we decorate it. I know you might have already, and that's okay if you have, but we want to keep it really flat while it's being designed and glued on. So I generally keep mine flat for the whole class until we've finished. So I have that. For reference, my cards are a 4x6, and they're these really, I don't know if you could see, they're textured, so they're kind of cool. So there's that. And we have a circle sizer. This is a little different than what I've used in the past in my in-person classes of those templates that have the foam on the back. This is kind of nice. It's a little bit more transferable, store it places, and also it's easier to clean if you get a bunch of glue on it. So we have that. And as usual, we have our slotted quilling tool. Mine is this really long, thin one with a teeny tiny little slit. I don't even know if you can see it on the camera. It's just really tiny. And then just as an example for a bigger one, this is the one that generally I'll use for making paper beads or for students who might be harder of sight. It's just much easier to see the slit in there and get your paper in there. So there's that. And then I brought a couple different types of tweezers to show. These are the ones that I'll use. They're really thin and like come down to like a needle point. And they have a good long grip, so you can really have a lot of control. But also any kind of eyebrow tweezers, tweezers that you might find at the drugstore, anything like that would be fine. So those are a couple examples of those. Our trusty dusty glue bottles with the little needle. I have worked out some more tips for keeping these a little cleaner. I've tried in a class having them upside down in a cup with a little wet paper towel on the bottom, and that worked pretty well. But definitely during class, keeping it sitting on its side can help with getting them clogged, because I know that tends to be a pretty big issue with those. I myself will also be using this clear tacky glue when I glue it to the card. The white glue, the school glue that I have in here, will be when I'm gluing the pieces together. And then this is what I use to glue them to the card. And today we're going to use scissors. I know we normally don't, but the centerpiece for this one, I don't know if you could see really well in the description, but the centerpiece here on the outside is feathered. So you will want to have scissors today if you want to have a feathered center. So we have those. For this card, I chose to do blue, just be a little bit different. So These are the normal size strips. They're not extra long or anything, but they are those 3mm ones that are best for cards. And you're actually going to want 16 of these strips. Even though we only have 8 petals, you're going to glue 2 at a time, end to end. And so I'll go through that and show you that part. So you'll need 16 of those. Then you're going to need, for your centerpiece, a thicker one. So this is a 5mm, and it's just about, this is actually a little long. I might trim it up a little when we're working on it. But it's going to be probably about 1/4 of a strip of a general strip length. And this is the one that we're going to feather and cut in a bunch of slits to give it kind of that more textured look. And then all the green for our leaves and stem. So there's my gray strip for the center as well. All right. So today what I'm going to do is we've gone through and I've shown you the tools that you need. I also want to just kind of tell you the steps that we're going to go through for the class. So I've shown you what we're going to use. Then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to make the petals. And we're going to go through and make all the petals together. And then I'll show you the steps for making both the parts of the center. And then we'll do that all together. And then the stem, and then the leaves. And then once we have all of those individual pieces, then we'll glue them all down together and kind of organize it at that point. But I think the best way to get started is to glue end to end those 16 pieces from the get-go. So that way they can start to dry. Each individual set of them can begin to dry. So when we want to open them up, they don't get stuck together with the glue at the connector points. So what I mean by end to end is we're going to take 2 of our strips that are for the petals. You're going to take your glue bottle, and this is where I really like these needlepoint glue bottles because we just want one tiny little dot. And so we're gonna, yeah, one little dot will do, yeah. So nothing crazy, one little dot. And then end to end, so this is the end of the other strip. You're just gonna overlap them a little, but nothing dramatic. And you want to try to make sure that they're even. So that way, once you squish it down and it's glued there, it looks pretty much like it's all one strip instead of 2 strips glued together. So you can kind of see there's maybe a little bit of an overlap where you can kind of see the edge, but nothing, like it's not totally off to the side. All right. And so we're going to do this 7 more times. So using the circle sizer is really helpful with keeping each of these petals just about the same size. You know, definitely for some variations, it might be fun to have, one petal really big or, a few petals kind of misshapen a little bit. But for this particular project, we're going to try to make our petals all around the same size. So if you're looking at a design, most of the time there will be a guide for what size of these circles you're going to use. These measurements are in centimeters, or in millimeters, excuse me. And then the ruler across the top has centimeters. So we're going to go and we're going to look here and see that we used this 20 here. So for your purposes, if you don't have this exact one, this is 20 millimeters. A lot of different templates will have measurements. My other ones generally have a 20 or a 15, so you should have something similar to this size. I would compare it to the size of a quarter if you're trying to decide if the size that you have is the same. So we're going to go ahead and I try to take one of these longer strips that has been sitting there for a while because like I said, we want the middle section to have dried some. The reason for that is we want these to open up into petals, and if this middle section is still wet with glue, then once you try to open it, you're going to have a really tight coil in the center that doesn't want to open up because it's glued shut. So we'll go ahead and start with the basics before worrying about this circle sizer. So you're going to take your slotted quilling tool and you're going to take your strip with the tail towards you. So the long tail I like to have towards me. It just kind of keeps it out of the way and keeps me from getting all twisted up. And the nice thing with these slotted quilling tools is that they not only have the slit, which holds the paper for you, but they're also open at the top, which you can kind of see if you had a microscope there. The slit there. And so you're going to load from the top. And I like to leave a little bit of a tail there. So you can see there's just a little bit of excess at the top. All right. And the position for fingers that I like to use that's worked well for me is my finger on the bottom and my thumb on the side. And not a death grip, like we're not pinching it, but definitely firm but gentle. So you're in control of the paper, but you're also not like causing it to tear or fold. Like we really want it to roll around this hook. So once you have your position, you feel ready, we're gonna twist this towards us. And as you go, you're gonna use that finger and thumb to really keep the paper in that little crook between your two fingers. So it's not like sliding all over the comb, over the tool, and it's not falling off the side. And also so it's not really loose. We are going to loosen this up and open it up in that circle sizer, but when we put it in there, we want it to be um, together, not loose already. So now that we have this here, I like to hold it like a sandwich, like the top and the bottom of the bun. And I'm going to look for the opening on the hook, and I'm going to use my finger, my nail, to kind of push it off so that way the tail in the center doesn't get stuck in the hook. All right, so I'll put that to the side, and I'm going to try to keep this together so that it's not like springing apart. And we're going to take our circle sizer. Now on this circle sizer, the number associates to the circle to the right and below it. So the 20 is the numbers here, the circle's here. All right. So we have our little coil here, and you're going to do your best to lay it in there and let it open up. try to lift that up a little bit for you with this card. So you see it's opened up pretty well. So once you have that in there, we're going to take our tweezers and keep your glue bottle open and nearby because we're about to use that. Oh, see? It just kind of popped out of there a little. Okay. So this is one of those times where I really like having a little bit longer of a handle on my tweezers and a fine point because it really gives me a lot of control and maneuverability. So when you go to pick this up, you definitely could just try to pick it out of there without tweezers. And if you're able to do that, like, more power to you. So here, we're going to go and pick, for this time, we're going to try to pick somewhere nearish to the middle. It doesn't have to be the exact center, but somewhere near the middle. And grab there, and then grab on the outside of the coil, so that when you pick it up, you've got the whole thing with you, but that it's also keeping that size. I like to then transfer it over to my fingers to glue it. However, if you feel more comfortable gluing like this while you're holding it in the tweezers, that definitely is not wrong. So we're going to take your glue, take your little tail here on the end, and just one little dot of glue. You really come to see during these videos why I love this bottle so much. I know there's a lot of complaints about it getting clogged, but considering how much massive amounts of glue I would get out of this giant bottle each time, the dot in the needle bottle is really perfect. Okay, so you've got your little glue there. We're going to go ahead and flatten it down. So just touching it a few times down there, pushing it, it should be good to go. Now we have our card here. You see on the card that there's kind of a longer section that's pointed and then a littler section that's pointed. So for this, we're going to start out making a teardrop. And the way that I like to do that is to hold the circle center on one finger or one hand and pull the other side to a point by pinching it. And we'll pinch it pretty strongly because we want to actually have a full point there. So this gives you the teardrop shape. So for some projects, we'll stop there, and that'll be the teardrop that we wanted to make. However, for this project, we need to have a point on that side. So to do that, you're going to hold where you already have the point on one side. You're going to take the round side and just pinch it a little bit higher up. So then you have a pretty close to an eye shape, but with a little bit more focus on one side than the other for the points. All right. So we're going to do that 7 more times, the exact same thing. All right. So we have 8 petals. We'll just go ahead on to creating our center piece now for the sake of time. So like I mentioned before, you can see on this card, there's a lighter blue in the center that's a tight coil. And a tight coil just means that we haven't expanded it at all. We glued it while it was still on the quilling tool. And I'll show you that bit. And then on the outside of it is this navy blue that's fringed. So we're going to fringe our strip first before we do any gluing or quilling. So let's go ahead and grab that thicker 5mm or thicker strip, however thick you'd like to go. The reason we don't use the thin one for this is just that by the time that you've frayed something this thin, it tears really easily, it doesn't show up as well. This thicker one gives us a little bit more play. So I'm going to actually, I don't think I made mine a quarter of a strip, so I'm just going to make it just a little bit smaller. For reference, this is 10 centimeters is what I'm going to use. You're welcome if you want to have more layers around the outside or less to make it longer or shorter. Or if you just don't enjoy the task of fringing it, which can be kind of tedious, then you can decide to add or remove length. So we're going to put our circle sizer aside. We don't need it for a few minutes. And you're going to take this 5mm strip. And it's just real simple. We don't want to cut all the way down, but maybe a tiny little bit halfway down the strip each time. So they don't have to be equal distance from one to the next. It's actually sometimes better if they're not. It gives it a little bit more natural look. But just try not to cut too far down, because then once we're twisting it, it'll just tear off at that point. So try to really not go any farther down than halfway across the width of the strip. So we'll set that there, and then we're going to locate the rest of our centerpiece, and that is this strip. I'm actually going to make these the same length just for ease purposes. And these are going to get glued end to end, just like the other strips. So when you're gluing them though, this thinner strip, you actually want to glue near the bottom of the other strip. And the reason for that is so then the frayed part will sit a little higher and can actually fold out more easily instead of getting caught up in this short strip. So we've got our little 3mm strip here. We'll add just a dot of glue just like before. And I'm going to take this one and near the bottom, I'm going to glue them together right there. Might be a little bit too far down. There we go. So if you can see that, it's kind of off the end. You don't need it to be off the end, but that'll actually work okay for us because that's going to give us a little bit more height off the card. And when you're ready, when we grab this and we're getting ready to put our tool in, we want to be sure that the fringe is not on the same side as the tool. The reason being is once you get down here, if the fringe is on this side, it's going to get torn up trying to go around the coil at the same time. So we want the fringe facing away from the side that has the tool. So same as before, load it from the top, little bit of a tail, thumb and finger, and we're going to quill it up. Now this first part is pretty straightforward. keeping it the same kind of size in there. All right. Now this is where it can get tricky. And it's mostly just trying to allow the fringe part to come under your finger without like tearing at it or having too much of a death grip or letting it get too loose. And the too loose part is where our glue is going to come in handy. So I'm going to keep twisting it. I did let it dry a little so that way when I make this move and this glued part here is coming around the hook, it's not going to tear off because it's had time to glue and solidify. All right, so we're going to keep going. And I like to have my thumb on the end of the fringe. So you can see it's just right there. It's not like trying to go over or, way off. It's just right against there. And while I do this, I might just add a dot of glue as I go along, right on the bottom, not where the fringe is, because I want that to open up, but along that edge there. Just give it a little glue and go a little further. And because I don't want it to loosen up too much again, I might put a little dot of glue there again. And keep going. And put another dot of glue and keep going. So now put a little glue there and I'm going to close it up. And when it comes to tight coils, whether they have fringe or whether they don't, I like to push the glue down, but then rotate the whole shape around between my fingers a little. All right. So when you've gotten that, my personal preference is to try to fringe this a little bit before I take it off. So you might have to push it up towards the end a little so that you have some more control. And then I'm just gonna pull down, just flip down some of these fringes. And just play with it a little. You're not gonna hurt it. Just, you can have them come down more or less. You can have the ones in the center like spike up a little if you want. You might use your tweezers to pull some of them out and push some of them down. Just play around with it till it is how you like it. And when you have it how you like it, I like to push the center down a little because I want the fringe to stick up more. So you can kind of use your tool to hold that down while you push the fringe up. So once I have it like this, I think I'm pretty happy with that. There we go. Okay. So now you can use your fingers or you can use your tweezers. And I'm going to do my best to pull this off of here. The reason I use my tweezers a little bit is because I don't want to smush all the fringe, but I might have to if it's too tight on there. Now we're going to prep our stem because we want to set it aside to dry while we finish our leaves. Okay, so this is about half of a strip, maybe a little longer. You can always glue a full strip if you like, and then adjust it for the size of card you have or just preferences. You can put your scissors away. We're not going to need them anymore. All right, so this strip we're going to use for the stem. Now you can absolutely glue this down as a stem as is. However, this is pretty flimsy, and especially if you're trying to mail these or you just want to keep them nice, it's going to flop over pretty easily. So what you can do instead is fold it in half like a hamburger, just like this. So now you've made it half the length, but twice the thickness. All right. And then you're just going to run a bead of glue down half of the strip on the inside. So I will demonstrate. I'm actually going to put my tweezers here. It's kind of a helpful, if your strip keeps wanting to pop up, you can always put your tweezers or some other object on one end to hold it down a little for you. All right, we've glued that whole half side. We'll fold it again, and then just between your fingers, just glue it down. And I like to run it several times through my fingers because that's what really like squishes it into the spots that maybe I missed. It really kind of makes it strong and sturdy. So we'll set that aside. And the last thing that we're going to create are our leaves. Now, the example that we have here has 3 leaves of various colors as well. It's absolutely personal preference for how many leaves you put, where you position them. So the first method, using the circle sizer, I've got this quarter sheet or quarter strip. Probably for the normal size strips, this would probably be about a third size. So somewhere between a quarter and a half, whatever preference you have. Or if you want massive leaves, I mean, you could always do full length strips. It's totally up to you. So we're going to go ahead. We've got our strip here, a little bit of a tail, and we're going to twist up the whole thing. Okay, there you have it. You try to keep it pretty even. And we'll pluck that off. So if we're using the circle sizer, obviously we don't have nearly as big of a coil to need the 20. And that would just, it wouldn't fully, it would overly open and not be a real attractive coil that way. So let's try, this size right here is 9. So let's try putting it into the 9 here. Now you might decide, looking at that, like, yeah, that's as open as I wanted. I can see some space in between it, but it's not super expanded. I'm actually going to go ahead and try the 10 that's right next to it and see if I like that a little more. And I do. The reason here, if you look, it's able to kind of expand more clearly. The green is kind of hard to tell though. Hopefully the white background helps. So I just like that size a little better. So I'm going to go with the 10 and take my trusty tweezers here, grab somewhere near the middle, and then grab the outside. Okay, and we're going to switch hands if that's your preference. And one little dab of glue. All right. Gonna glue that down. All right, you have your little circle there. Now, these are the same shape as our flower petals. They might look a little different just because of their size, but they're the same shape. So we're going to do the same thing to them that we did to our petals. So we're going to hold the center and pull the side and give it a generous pinch. to create that teardrop shape. Then we're going to pinch just a little on the other side. And that'll give you your little leaf. All right. So now let me show you the other method for expanding this particular shape. Say you don't have a size on your circle sizer that you like for this shape. Say you misplaced your circle sizer, or this just simplifies the process if you don't want to use the circle sizer, which I will sometimes find myself doing when I make flowers. I like to make the leaves a little bit different each time. So we've quilled it up. We're going to take it off just like before. But instead of opening it up in a circle sizer, we are going to hopefully zoom in well. That's good enough, I think. There. And we are going to let it open up as much as we want. So we're going to slowly and controlled let it open up as much as we want. Now you could just like let it go and see how big it gets and choose to have that be the size that you go with. But if you want it to be a little bit more similar to the last one, then you just kind of controlled open it yourself. So, same as before then, we'll put our little dab of glue and glue that down. All right, and make that teardrop shape. Pinch generously on one side. There's your teardrop. And then pinch a little on the other side. There's your leaf. All right. So you've got 4 little leaves there. They actually all are just a touch different from each other. Nobody's completely uniform. All right. So let's gather all our pieces. So we've got 8 petals that we made. We've got our strip for a stem. We've got our little centerpiece, and then we've got our leaves. Now for this card, we're actually going to be the center widthwise, but just a little bit above lengthwise. So maybe right around here will be our center. And the reason I talk so much about the center is we are going to glue our centerpiece, our pollen, first, because everything else is going to get glued around there, and we're less likely to squish all the petals together, and then we can't fit the center on, or put the stem down, and then the petals don't fit. So if we start with our pollen, and we put in the spot that we want everything to be centrally located around, then we're going to be in good shape. So, all right. This is when I'm going to start using that tacky glue that I talked about. Like I said, you're definitely fine to use the white glue. It's going to stick as well. This is just a bit more for durability and kind of molding a little bit. I will say with quilling, you've got maybe a minute or so to readjust things. If you glue something down, either type of glue, if you glue something down and you realize, oh, crud, I didn't want it there, I wanted it, over here, I wanted it up higher, you've got a little bit of time, but it will dry faster than you think. And once it does, you can definitely pull things up, but you might tear the paper underneath. So just take your time, be really intentional about where you want things to go down so that you don't have to pick it up and move it around. So for this bottom piece and any like tight coils, you don't need to saturate the whole bottom, but just putting a little bit near the center should do just fine for you. All right. So I'm gonna go back. Here's my line. So I personally tend towards eyeballing it instead of measuring. So let's say we'll go right about here for the center of our card, or for the center of our flower. All right. And we're just gonna glue that down. I'm not gonna smush it down because I don't want to mess too much with the fringe. And if I'm giving it a second to sit there anyways, it's gonna grab onto that paper and be glued pretty well. So you don't have to worry about it moving around too much. So now is when we're gonna attach all of our little petals. So go ahead and kind of gather those up. If you want, you can pre-lay them out so you kind of have a good idea. If for some reason your centerpiece is bigger or smaller, you may find that you want more or less petals, and that's totally fine too. So let's see what we got going. I think I'm gonna do okay on petals here, but you just never know. All right, so that looks good. All right. So the nice thing about having this laid out ahead of time is, one, I know that I'm not going to want to make more petals, which is something I'd kind of prefer to know before I start gluing all the petals down. Two, then it's more or less of a puzzle. So I put some glue on a piece, put it back down. Put some glue on a piece, put it back down. All right. As far as glue placement on this shape, we want it to do two things. We want it to sit to the paper really well, but we also want it to sit against the center and next to the petal next, or like against the petal next to it. So for this first one, I'm going to put a little dot right on the edge, right on the point. And then for all of them, I'm just going to cascade a little bit of glue. It doesn't have to be anything excessive. We don't want it to be all wilted, but we want it to kind of kiss several of the edges so that way most of the layers have some level of glue to connect to the paper. You can also have like a puddle of glue if you prefer and just dip. That works really well too, especially if you don't want to do like the two-handed situation. All right, so then when I glue this down, I'm going to push it against the center and lay it down. And that's just because by the time I get to the end of this, I don't want a bunch of petals like sitting far away from the center. I want them to all be connected to the center piece. All right, so that's one. So this second piece is where I'm going to add a step of glue. So I'm going to put it on the edge, right on that tip like before. But then I'm also going to put a little dab on the piece that's already glued down, like to connect to the piece that's already glued down next to it. I don't want to put it on this side yet because when I put it down, I don't want it to stick to a petal that I haven't glued yet, because then I'm trying to tear them apart when I go to glue that one. All right, so then just a little bit of cascading glue on this side. I want to touch the center and the one next to it and then lay it down. And we'll just do this all the way around till we finish all our petals. Now, we'll go ahead and locate our strip that we have for the stem. And this is a part that I definitely consider to be like personal preference. So you could absolutely do a stem that just comes straight down, just like that. You could have been a longer strip and have something that connects, from way up high all the way down so it looks more like the flower is kind of like bending. For here, I'm going to play around and see what I like. I am kind of thinking I'm going to go this route today, have it go from about halfway up and come down. But you could also, the example that we have here has it coming from this one and then just shortening this end a little bit. So feel free to make this longer or shorter, whatever your preferences are. Actually, the longer I look at it like that, I kind of like that. Yeah, I think I like this one. Okay, we're going to stick with this. All right, now, this is a technique that is called edge quilling. A lot of times when you look up quilling, a lot of the quilling that you'll see is edge quilling. And basically it means exactly like what it sounds like. You're gluing these on the edge. So instead of having a flat stem, just gluing it on the flat side, we're going to glue it on the edge side, which means the tweezers are going to be your friend because then you can hold it and not get your hands coated in glue. And it means that when you do have the glue, you can guide exactly where you want it to go. So we're going to take our time. We're going to be patient. And we're going to put glue the entire length down the edge of this strip. I also, for something like this, I like to have a little bit of glue on this tip because I'm going to wedge it in to the flower and I want it to really just stick in there. So let's go ahead. When you're ready, let me see if I can get you a better hand angle there. All right, I'm going to wedge first and then gently lay it down. So you might think at this point, this stem going through the mail or even just getting folded and put in your purse somewhere is just really flimsy. It can definitely still move around. It's going to get folded flat. And you can definitely choose, like, I just like the stem. I just want to keep the stem. But a trick to keeping the stem in a better condition and less likely to flop over is using leaves. Strategically or aesthetically, however you like. But the farther down you use them, the less likely this little end is to fold. But if you don't want them that far down, you don't need to have them that far to really make an impact with the leaves. It just kind of shores it up a little and makes it less flimsy. So play around with placement wherever you like them. Do be careful about not going too low on your card because then once you try to put this in an envelope, it'll either be hard to get in or hard to close it. So let's see. I think I'll put my last one up here a little higher. So maybe a couple low and a couple high. Alright, there you have it. Our finished flower, the cute little center. Thank you so much for watching my first ever weekly video. I hope you enjoyed this project. Thank you so much as well for being an All Access patron. Your support means the world to me, and I look forward to continuing to share more paper art with you next week at our first monthly live stream class. So be on the lookout for that schedule. Happy crafting!